consideration. The chair does recognize the absence of school board member Susan Morrison, who contacted me in advance due to family matters, and she regrets not being here, but will be with us for our work session. And so that our meeting is now called to order. I would now like to move to item B, which is our approval of the agenda. And board members, each of you have received the agenda in advance, and items are there. And we do want to thank our superintendent and agenda prep participants for making sure that everything that board members needed to be included here for our meeting tonight. Is there a motion now to approve the agenda as presented? Dr. Gupta making a motion to approve. Dr. Brennan is second. There are no further questions or discussion. Madam Clerk, would you please close the roll?
School Board Member Evans?
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Carter?
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Brennan?
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Coleman?
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Nellis?
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Sinhai?
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Gupta?
Yes.
School Board Member Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Thank you. We will now stand for our Pledge of Allegiance and raise the flag this great auditorium. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, members of the board, and with so much going on in our nation, what a wonderful way to be reminded of this great country that we live. At this time, we will now move into Section C of our agenda, which is pertaining to public comments. And we do want to, again, allow all persons in the audience to know that we are continuing our board protocols around COVID, and mask inside of the buildings on school property is, of course, required. And we thank you for cooperation as it relates to that. We also further acknowledge that our meetings are provided for via our YouTube channel that you can watch, and later on channel 17. At this time, we do want to acknowledge that we have public comments, and I believe we have a public comment in writing. Madam Clerk, do we have any voice messages?
No, sir.
And then we have 3 persons who have signed up to make public comments for us tonight. And so I would like to acknowledge that persons appearing before the school board will not be allowed to campaign for public office or promote private business ventures, and should not use profanity or vulgar language or gestures, make comments about a public official or an employee that are not related to his or her official duties, engage in behavior that disrupts the meeting or intimidates others, or address the school board on issues that do not concern the services, policies, role, and/or responsibilities of the school board. Individual speakers shall limit their comments to 3 minutes. A speaker representing a group shall limit his comments to 5 minutes. The representative shall identify the group at the beginning of his or her presentation. A group may have no more than 1 spokesperson. The total allotted time for public comments at school board meetings is 30 minutes. Public comments are reserved for the public to provide input. The board does not respond to comments, answer questions, or otherwise engage in discussion at this time. Before we have our public comments, I am going to ask that our vice chair would read our written public comment at this time.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we have one written statement, which is from Philip Stump. And Mr. Stump states, I would like to thank LaTanya Brown for her informative presentation at the recent school board work session concerning SROs and school discipline policies. I urge the board to place these matters on the agenda for the next possible regular school board meeting. There are significant problems with the use of SROs in our schools. I would also urge the board to present accurate data concerning the use of suspensions and expulsions disaggregated by race and gender. Thank you, Philip Stump.
Thank you, Mr. Stump. Thank you, Dr. Brennan. At this time, our first public comment will be given by Aaron Reed, who as an individual will address Return to Learn. Mr. Reed.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Aaron Reed, and I am a teacher in Lynchburg City Schools. I am a graduate of LCS and EC Glass. This week marks the end of my 22nd year as a teacher. The challenges of this past year have brought some stark truths to light about education in Central Virginia. Our community has had a glimmer of the challenges that we face in the classroom. Challenges including children without enough to eat, children who need social and emotional support, children who struggle with basic motivation. But too quickly have some forgotten the lessons of this pandemic. Some who considered the safety of children and adults in these buildings as acceptable collateral if it meant that their child could go to an open school. You have been vilified by those with ulterior motives who seek to remove the public part of public education. And make no mistake, educators like me have watched every board meeting and every work session that you have had as you have struggled through tough problems and arrived at sometimes unpopular compromises. So in the face of that criticism that can seem like a constant barrage, I wish to offer a reminder of what we accomplished this year. Faculty taught in some of the most creative and original ways imaginable to kids on the other side of a computer screen as well as the ones right in front of them. They created online games, impromptu songs, and original forms of assessment that sought to meet the child where he or she was. They welcomed the student who maybe didn't turn their camera on for Zoom until March. They called home and spoke frankly with parents about the real challenges that students faced trying to complete tasks in a less than optimal environment. Now, make no mistake, there are some changes on the horizon that teachers in your system are concerned about. Moving all of grades 6 through 12 to an AB block next year, and then switching to a 4x4 block again the next year, has some serious consequences. And we hope that there is a more robust discussion about that in the future. Alterations to the phonics program at our elementary schools is similarly concerning. There are places for you to ask important, pressing questions and to listen to all relevant parties. But when you err on the side of children and adults in this system, when you acknowledge the tremendous efforts of your staff, including bus drivers, custodians, and cafeteria staff, who are the true unsung heroes of any school system, you do right, not only by your school, but by the community that you serve. I urge you to resist the voices that would sacrifice the needs of the many to empower the needs of the few. I urge you to defend the public part of our public education. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reed, for your comments. Reason Chandler tonight is before us representing Virginia organizers, and his subject is SROs. Thank you, Mr. Chandler.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Dr. Edwards, members of the school board. My name is Reason Chandler. I'm the pastor at Jackson Street United Methodist Church, and I'm also a leader in the Lynchburg chapter of Virginia Organizing. I want to commend you for the work that you've done through this pandemic. I want to commend you on the work that you've done to assure that the greatest amount of equity for our students and our families and our community are reached and upheld. And yet again, I want to bring to our memory that like maybe 4 years ago, we had a forum at the Lynchburg Library where we were addressing the school to prison pipeline. And that's where we learned that there was just so many moving parts in addressing this issue that we needed to find a place to start. But from that forum, we learned so much from our community and from the members of our student body and our students that attend our schools. We were asking, is there a plan as it pertains to the SROs for the board to engage in student voices yet again, and to ask parents and school resources and members how they felt about and what is their involvement, if any, in the relationship with the SROs being present in the schools. We also wanted to bring to your memory and ask and challenge you to answer yet again the question of the resources that are being used for having law enforcement within our schools. Is this the best use of resources of our public schools when we have so many other needs for students? And again, we hope to be able to collaborate as we have in the past, as we work on being sure again and again and again that our children have the greatest advantage, that they have every advantage and every opportunity, not just our smartest, but even those who are the most challenged to survive and or be successful in our public school system. And so we asked the school board if they would be willing to implement a survey among the students to investigate students' attitudes towards the school resource officers. I, for one, have had very pleasant experiences with the resource officers. Officer Johnson, in particular, at Dunbar, really impressed me one day when my daughter and her friend decided to leave school like maybe 1 minute before the bell rung. And he followed them all the way to my house. And when I came outside to see what was going on, he got out of his car and he addressed me as Mr. Chandler. He introduced himself. He shook my hand and he said, "I just wanted to make sure that your daughters made it home safely." So I do understand the importance of SROs, the importance of our staff and our administrators that work in our schools, and how it helps us rest and be able to be supportive parents and workers in our community to have this security. I do understand, and yet at the same time I'm asking if we could maybe find then more resources that we could use to implement in conditions of some of our students who are struggling mentally, struggling emotionally, struggling financially, struggling relationally, so that we could still yet again improve even more the equity that we're placing in our education system and in our children, who is our future and who will grow up to be productive citizens in Lynchburg City and all over the world. Thank you for your time today. God bless you.
Thank you, Pastor Chandler. Our last public comment will be given by Mr. Andrew Glover, who is coming to us tonight on behalf of the conservative parents of Lynchburg, and he wants to share with us matters of his own consideration.
Good evening, Lynchburg City School Board. My name is Andrew Glover. I'm an LCS parent and represent the conservative parents of Lynchburg, a group of over 220 Lynchburg parents and teachers. I come before you tonight with two very critical concerns. The first is regarding the use of any teaching material that perpetuates critical race theory. Critical race theory begins from the assumption that racism occurs in all interactions. To see how this works, let's look at a thought experiment. Imagine you own a shop and two customers enter at the same time. One is white and one is black. Who do you help first? If you help the black person first, critical race theory would say that you did so because you don't trust the black person to be left in your store alone. That's racist. However, if you help the white person first instead of the black, you would say that the black person is a second-class citizen. That's racist too. This is the essence of critical race theory, that you can find racism in anything, even if they have to read your mind to do it. Critical race theory proponents assume racism is present everywhere and always, and they look critically for it until they find it. There are many examples of this, but let me read you one quote from a leading proponent of critical race theory. It states, "Capitalism and racism are interlinked, which is why I call them conjoined twins." This insinuates that even the participation in one of our core pillars as a free society is by definition racist, that the simple act of eating McDonald's cheeseburger can now be considered racist. That quote and that thought process and many others concerning the ones I don't have time to highlight came from Ibram Kendi, a self-proclaimed anti-racist. And as it relates to LCS, he is a cited resource in the Virginia Commission of African American History Education in the Commonwealth Report. That is a commission that LCS Superintendent Edwards served on and contributed to. It's also one that forms the basis of a curriculum coming soon if it's not here already. Ibram Kendi, along with many others, cited resources in this curriculum, like the 1619 Project, Robin DiAngelo's White Fragility, promote this uniquely un-American concept of critical race theory. Not since the Aryan obsession in Germany in the 1930s and 40s, or the South African apartheid in the second century of the 20th century, has a social movement been so obsessed with race, and it has no place in our community and our schools' curriculums. So I call on every school board member not to be intimidated by this heads I win, tails you lose logic of the self-destructive, American-hating, anti-reality ideas. Don't be bullied into thinking that you're racist when you know you're not, or that you're a victim when you know you're not. I urge you to start an investigation into critical race theory within LCS and gut it out before it destroys our next generation. The second item that I need to speak to you tonight, I honestly cannot believe that I have to be asking this. But tonight, the school board is considering a recommendation by VSBA to remove policy number KNA, which prohibits registered sex offenders, including child sex offenders, on LCS campuses. You're getting ready to remove that policy. Furthermore, the board will be voting to update policy KN, which removes the dissemination of certain information to school personnel, such as bus drivers and playground monitors, who would typically be alerted to watch out for these suspect individuals. The policy KN does attempt to address the removal of policy KNA. However, it only outright bans Tier 3 offenders, but still allows a path for Tier 1 and Tier 2 sex offenders to enter school buildings under a yet-to-be-defined procedure. Examples of a Tier 1 and Tier 2 offender, which under the current wording would potentially be allowed on school campuses, include those individuals who produce child porn, commercial sex traffickers and pimps, prostitutes, and those convicted of sexually battery and more. I cannot honestly tell you how disturbing it is that the idea that somebody who produces child porn would ever have a path to ending up on an LCS campus. It makes me sick. So I would ask the school board to delay taking any action on these two policies until their contents can be adequately explained to the community, allowing you time to collect feedback from the community and for the community to understand what these two policies represent. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Glover. Thank you, Pastor Chandler, and thank you, Mr. Reed, for your public comments, so noted by the board. We will now move to our next section of our agenda, which is pertaining to Section D, student representative comments. And this is what it's all about, school board members and community, watching the development of our young people. And so we're going to hear for this year, school year, for the last time, from Grayson Arnold, student representative from Heritage High School, and then Jaden Scott from E.C. Glass High School as our student rep. And then after they have finished, our vice chair is going to read a resolution of recognition to the student school board representatives for 2020, 2021. And if you want to do some exercise, let's clap for them as they come forward.
So, can y'all hear me?
Yes.
I just want to say thank y'all so much for the opportunity to be able to speak to y'all this entire school year. It's opened up so many doors and opportunities, and I really just appreciate it. I want to thank each and every school board member for everything they've done this year. We've been thrown a curveball. LCS and all the other schools in the nation have been thrown one of the craziest curveballs, I think, imaginable, and we've made it. We're here at the end, and it's just amazing. So I just want to thank all of y'all, and yeah, it's great.
Hi, all. On behalf of all of EC Glass and just the remainder of the Lynchburg, we just want to say thank you. We know students have gone through so much this year, but class of 2021 has officially graduated from Heritage and EC Glass. Grayson is a 2021 graduate. That is amazing. And with all that we've been going through, I just want to say thank you so much to each and every one of you, because I know on different occasions I've spoken with each and every one of you, and it has been nothing but pleasant conversation. Everyone has been so extremely nice, so helpful for any and everything that was needed during the times that we were speaking. And so I want to say thank you all so much for making all these decisions for our school, for being there no matter what, and I just want to say thank you all so much.
Wow, thank you both. Let's give them another hand. And you all just stay right there for just a moment. And as we now move into section E, oh, please, please.
How about we give y'all a round of applause?
Oh.
Y'all are doing amazing. Yes.
All right, fellow board members, you deserve it. Yes, indeed. Thank you. You all have been remarkable. And Dr. Edwards wants you both to know that something very special will be coming to your respective homes in the very near future. And at this time, our vice chair is going to read a resolution from the board.
Thank you, Dr. Coleman. It is a pleasure to read a resolution of commendation and appreciation to Jaden Scott and Grayson Arnold, presented by Lynchburg City School Board. Jaden Scott and Grayson Arnold were selected by their peers to represent EC Glass and Heritage High School on the Lynchburg City School Board during the 2020-2021 school year. The Lynchburg City School Board views this desire to serve in public life as the worthiest of ambitions. With this resolution, the Lynchburg City School Board seeks to pay tribute to Jaden Scott and Grayson Arnold, students who have conscientiously worked to keep their student body's viewpoint before Lynchburg City School Board. In doing so, they have fulfilled their responsibility and made a valuable contribution to public education in this community. Therefore, whereas Jaden Scott and Grayson Arnold serve Lynchburg City Schools as the EC Glass and Heritage High School student representatives to the Lynchburg City School Board from November 2020 until June 2021. And whereas Jaden Scott and Grayson Arnold served as the role models for their peers, excelling as leaders and voices for their schools by participating in important school board discussions that directly affect their peers. Whereas Jaden Scott and Grayson Arnold's attendance at Lynchburg City School Board meetings demonstrated their commitment to their roles as champions for the best possible educational experience for all students. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Lynchburg City School Board of Lynchburg, Virginia commends Jaden Scott and Grayson Arnold for their many valuable contributions in providing the school board with yet another viewpoint for their consideration and guidance. Furthermore, the school board of the City of Lynchburg takes pride in these superior individuals who so early in their lives have already begun to make their marks by taking such an active part in public life in Lynchburg, Virginia. Thank you, Jaden and Grayson.
Dr. Edwards, would you like to make a closing comment?
Absolutely. So you two have been an absolute joy to work with. I am so very proud of everything that you managed to accomplish during this school year, during a pandemic, winning championships, studying, getting good grades, showing up here, staying at board meetings pretty late sometimes, but always giving your best and always having a positive can-do spirit. And even when it got really, really rough sometimes, the two of you were immaculate role models for us adults. And if we've learned anything, hopefully we've learned something from the two of you on how to handle conflict, because you have made it to the other side of conflict in a way that we all need to celebrate you. So we do have our version of LCS DoorDash, which will be coming to your homes this week with a special gift. I just want to let you know that so you don't not answer the door, just to celebrate you and once again say thank you, thank you, thank you. And congratulations on all of your accomplishments this year. And we know you're going to continue to make us proud. Thank you.
All right. Wow. I want to stand. Can we stand forward and thank you all? We really appreciate it. Excellent job. Wow, that makes it all the worth in the while for what we do. Thank you both. Look forward to working with you continuously in the future. This now brings us to E2 and Dr. Edwards' special presentation to Beth Morris, Director of School Nutrition.
Yes, and she is here, so I'm going to ask her to come up to the podium. And Beth is so shy, she's probably like, oh, no. So while Ms. Morris is coming up, she is our Director of School Nutrition. And I think Mr. Reed said school nutrition is one of our unsung heroes. If you remember when the pandemic first happened, it was our transportation department, nutrition department that really took the lead in terms of making sure that all of our kids were fed, that they had meals, and they were out there tirelessly delivering food, sometimes going back to re-deliver some food, and they fed everybody that they could, anybody who needed a meal, any child who needed a meal. And we were so grateful. And that energy did not stop. They continued throughout the summer, throughout the school year, just being creative in their work. And then sometime in the fall, there was an opportunity for some grant writing and to possibly get a nice little van, and Ms. Morris got a beautiful van so that she could continue to deliver foods and personalized service to students who were in our remote only, who could not come out to any of our sites to get food. She also, this summer, in case you don't know, because she does not stop, we're going to have food service at Miller Park, thanks to Ms. Morris, and making sure that kids have food there. She has written numerous grants. We have a two-door refrigerator, two-door freezer, a hot holding cabinet, in addition to this lovely van. And all of this has been done quietly behind the scenes. And many of you might not know all of the things that Ms. Morris and the School Nutrition Department has done. So sometime in March, there was this award, and No Kid Hungry, and she does a lot of work for that. And unfortunately, our award for our director was delivered to a different address. So it never made it here. And then when it did, it was at the time that our building was closed. So we had this box that was sitting there, and we wondered what was in that box. Well, we found out what was in that box, and we may have missed the No Kid Hungry celebration, but we just gonna have our own celebration, Ms. Morris. So I would like to present to you on behalf of No Kid Hungry, Lynchburg City Schools, Lynchburg City, and probably a few folks who don't even live in Lynchburg and got a meal too when you were out there delivering, our sincere thanks and appreciation for the tireless efforts and everything that you and your staff do and have done and will continue to do all summer long to make sure that the basic need, because kids aren't going to learn if they're hungry, y'all. We have to meet that basic need first. And you are always, always a champion for kids. So we celebrate you, and we may be late with No Kid Hungry, but better late than never. So we have a special award for you, as well as a photo op, which we have to send on, and I know you love pictures, which we have to send on to celebrate you. So I'm gonna ask Dr. Coleman to come down with me as we present you with this gift, and Ms. Pugh is going to take our picture.
Oh. While you all are coming down, I have to say thank you so much for this recognition, but I feel somewhat as though my entire staff should be here. I might be the individual that organizes, motivates, but wow, do you all and the city of Lynchburg have the most incredible group of dedicated professionals that work very much behind the scenes, but love those children. I'll just be finishing my 20th year as a school nutrition professional. It certainly has been one of the most challenging times in my career, but it's also been the most exceptional. It's truly been an honor to really reach out, to partner, and to be a part of a team that only wants to be what is best for our children. So thank you all very much.
We promised that we would take a picture and pass it on with the sign that says, "I am powered by breakfast," because one thing she makes sure is that our kids get breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snack. And just to show how inclusive we are, it's also in Spanish on the back. So we're going to ask you to hold that. And then in here, and I am going to ask you to open this, there is a small box along with a few other gifts in here. And there's a little award in that small box, if you would.
The small box?
Yes, take that out.
Oh, wow. Is that not the coolest thing?
Yes.
I'm
That's
telling you
awesome.
what, the Pillsbury Doughboy has nothing on me. Thank you all so, so much.
Thank you. Thank you for everything you do. We would be remiss if we did not take a moment to just
Well.
celebrate you.
And I just want to end with saying that, we are a team, and we're in the basement, and we kind of do our little thing from behind the scenes, but it really is such a rewarding experience to be a part of the LCS team, and knowing that our contribution is part of the puzzle that leads to and contributes to the success of our children. And so, again, thank you.
Thank you. What a wonderful opportunity to have these special presentations. And again, thank you so much, Beth, for everything that you do. We will now move to Section F, our finance report, April the 2021 financial report from our very capable and able Kimberly Lukanich.
Good evening. Tonight I'm presenting the April 30th financial report. Our operating budget remains the same as the previous month at $101,886,769.97. The revenue received to date, we have received 70.3%. Expenditures to date are showing at 72.45%. And the expenditures, including encumbrances, which is your contracted salaries and benefits as well as open purchase orders, is currently at 94.15%. I have attached the revenue report in detail, the expenditures by the major categories. Those were also presented at the May 25th Finance Committee for any questions, but if you have any questions tonight.
Dr. Gupta, please. Dr. Brennan, please.
Mr. Connors, thank you very much for your report. Just two quick questions, and again, mostly from my education, but as far as the sale tax receipts go, I see we're about 78%. We've received about 78%. Do you predict and hope that those will be on target as far as our budget goes? And the second question is that it looks like the revenue from dual enrollment is pretty low, like $225. I'm hoping that's just a timing issue as far as when we receive those.
So the second question, yes, it's a timing issue. We actually received that payment. We will receive that in June. The first question was sales tax. Our sales tax receipt is actually very strong. The way we have to record it, because there's a 2-month delay in receiving, we actually will be getting July receipts. It'll be pushed back. So when you look at your April report, you have May receipts, you also have June receipts, and then the July will get pushed back to the current year. So you have 3 more months, where with the other state, you would just have May and June. So it's actually been very strong this year.
Great, thank you.
Dr. Gupta.
So I have a question about this function 2200. I see a variance of 17 to 19% on the wrong side. So could you please explain why we're spending so much on function 2200?
So that
Where it's coming from?
So that was the category that we had stated beginning of the year, that when we were doing the annual school report, that function with the cost center was not a viable account code structure for the annual school report. So we have fixed it going forward, but in doing so, we had to move. Now, it's under the administrative section, but it's really administrative and health. But we had some positions that were coded, and this has been done historically, and an instructional support function that really we felt should be an administrative function. So we've made that correction in this year and then going forward. And if you recall, when we were doing the budget presentations, you would see that it looked like the administrative budget was going up significantly from the prior year. And we had stated that was part of that increase, was that correction.
This is a one-time variance, yes.
Yes, sir.
Any further thoughts, questions, concerns from the members of the board? All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Carnage, for the finance report. We'll now move to Section G, our consent agenda, and it is comprised of 3 items: school board meeting minutes from May the 4th, our school board work session minutes from May the 18th, and the human resources report. What is the pleasure of the board concerning the consent agenda? Is there a motion?
I move that we pass the consent agenda.
Dr. Carter has made a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second the.
Second by Dr. Brennan. Any further questions or discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
School Board Member Evans?
Yes.
School Board Member Carter?
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Brennan?
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Coleman?
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Nellis?
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Sinha?
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Gupta?
Yes.
School Board Member Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
8-0.
Thank you so much. All right, Section H is going to be our school board member reports. And if you have no report, you can indicate that as such. And if there is any need for discussion, the chair will certainly guide us in that process. H1, Finance Committee, Mr. Harvey.
The Finance and Facilities Committee met on Tuesday, May 25th at 3:30. We began our meeting with a review of the finance report by Ms. Lakonich. Following that, we discussed implementation of the school board stipend and the insurance, health insurance for school board members. Following that, we had a presentation by Mr. Gadsky regarding the facilities report on the admin building, which I believe will be covered in further detail later in this meeting. And finally, we had a discussion on the budget development for next year, and that will be something that I recommend that the board address so that there's a complete understanding of all members of the board on the preparation of the budget just beyond calendar. And that's the conclusion of my report.
Thank you, Mr. Harvey. Concerns or questions, Dr. Gupta?
I've asked several times before, could the agenda items, the material which is distributed to the committee is made public? And I see some items there, others not there, and that keeps me, if I'm not at the meeting, out of the loop unless the topic is discussed in full board. I'm assuming Finance Committee is a subcommittee, so where the discussions happen doesn't percolate up to the full board. That's my question number one, but I have a second one.
All right, before you go to the second one, you still have the floor. Madam Clerk, please so note that. I've heard that 2 or 3 times, and we do need to make sure that that happens as it relates to our standing committees, and I think it does in some instances. And so noted. Your second, you want to respond, Mr. Harvey?
Yes. After the minutes of the meeting are approved at the following meeting, they are then posted to board documents.
Thank you, sir.
That's our standard protocol. I believe that's with all committees.
Okay, thank you. So note that, Madam Clerk, and we'll review and make sure that all is done as it should be. Thank you, Mr. Harvey, for that. Dr. Gupta.
The other thing is, I heard during the meeting, I was quoted that I didn't like the budget process. So for record, I didn't tell directly or indirectly any Finance Committee member that I don't like the budget process. I've expressed opinions about micro level, macro level, need-based, things like that, but I have never expressed concerns about the budget calendar. So if there's any issues, they need to talk to me before they bring my name up. So I can say I was misquoted because I have no conversation with any member of the Finance Committee about my like or dislike for that calendar.
Thank you, Dr. Gupta. So noted. Any other statements that need to be made at this time? All right, thank you, Madam Clerk, and we'll work on it where necessary, any of those matters. Thank you, Mr. Harvey, for your report. Governor's School Committee Chair, again, Mr. Harvey.
No report at this time. We have a meeting this coming Wednesday.
Thank you so much, and there will be sufficient prep for our work session with Dr. Smith's visit for us in our work session. Thank you so much. H3, Laurel Regional School Committee, Dr. Sharon Carter.
There's no reporter this time, but the Laurel did hold a graduation ceremony that was wonderful, and the venue was outside of the Laurel School, and that was beautifully decorated, and all of the parents were happy as well as the graduates.
And we had a graduate.
Yes, we had 2 graduates.
2, very good. If you would, let's just pause and clap for that. Thank you, Dr. Carter, for being present, representing us with the law group. We appreciate that. H4, the STEM Academy, Dr. Nillis.
The STEM Academy did meet this past, I guess, May 24th, reviewed the year in general. They had 28 graduates, seniors that graduated, had 100% graduation.
Wow.
They held their graduation ceremony, I don't know, last week.
Okay.
It was following the CVCC, but, and they expect, there was some shuffling around to open slots for next year, but they expect those to be fully filled, and I think Lynchburg had a few openings that they were candidates. So that's full. Fundraising suffered a little bit just due to the fact that they weren't able to go out, but they did get some funds, and the intent is to reinvigorate that effort. So overall, it was a successful year. Students are going to college, or one's going in the military. So very good.
Thank you, Dr. Nillis, for your work with that group all year. And likewise, let's give those persons a hand. That's wonderful. This is what it's all about. All right, H5, Legislative Advocacy Committee, Ms. Belle Evans.
We already went over from our past meeting, and we are not going to have a June meeting. We will pick up in July.
Okay.
On a new agenda for the year.
Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Evans.
Wait a minute, because I went one other thing.
Please.
I will send an email, so in the next month, start thinking about areas that you think are important to push for so we can come together and come up with an agenda. So I'll send an email out just asking for ideas.
Thank you, Ms. Evans, for your leadership on that, and that's going to be exciting. Thank you so much. All right, H6, Task Force. Again, Ms. Morrison is not here. Dr. Gupta, any updates?
The task force is on a pause right now, so there's no other updates.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gupta. And we, of course, that matter is being handled at another level, so I don't want the board to think that there's nothing being done, but Dr. Gupta and Ms. Morrison will report out when it's time for us regarding that. And I do thank you for that, Dr. Gupta and Ms. Morrison. The last item is H7, and this is Partners in Education. And I do have a comment from Ms. Morrison that I will read. But Mr. Harvey, would you please?
I'll defer to
Okay.
Ms. Morrison, since she is actually the school board representative. I'll be more than happy to comment.
All right.
Business side.
Thank you. At the May meeting of the Partners in Education Board meeting, the board decided that it wanted to remain an independent board and not to become an advisory board to LCS. This means that they will continue its alliance with the Business Alliance and a partner to LCS. The PI board will need to contact the leadership of both organizations to detail what this means moving forward. And that is in terms of role clarification and other forms of definition as it relates to availability of our staff and not dealing with staff beyond what that availability can be. And so we'll work all of that out, and Dr. Brennan and myself and the superintendent will meet appropriately with those bodies to make sure that we can smoothly move forward and let PI be what it can be and needs to be. Any further statements on that?
No, I appreciate
All right,
the
thank you.
report
Thank
from Ms. Morrison.
Thank you so much. All right, we're now into Section I, unfinished business, and we will start with item 1, return to learn updates. Dr. Edwards.
Certainly, and this being the last board meeting before the last day of school, which is tomorrow, our official last day of school, and we will return to as close to normal procedures in the summer, with our summer programs being in person, and for the fall being as close to normal with our 5 days a week. We still await any other discussion about masks and so on and so forth with that. But the return to learn updates, as they have been focused on hybrid and whether or not we were having in-person learning, they're going to shift. We're seeing less numbers in terms of the positivity rate going down. So one of the things that we did want to recommend is that we do not continue to have return to learn updates. We talk about programs and things that we need to talk about, but we're back to learn right now. So it's not return to learn, it's learning is going on moving forward. So, but for today, I do have Dr. Jordan here to talk a little bit about summer programs and some other things as well. And I'm sure Dr. Sinha will give us the COVID update as well. Dr. Jordan.
Good evening, board. It was the LaTanya Brown show last time, so I don't know what you'll call it after tonight, but you'll see me quite a few times. I'm here to report to you about Return to Learn and summer programming. We are focusing on face-to-face summer school programming that will start in just a few weeks. I am happy to report and a tiny bit nervous to tell you that more than 1,600 students are currently registered for summer programming. I printed out a chart for you to reference. We have so many face-to-face summer programming options, and we have a couple of new credit online options that we've had in the past for students as well. We have partnered with the local YMCA to offer Power Scholars. We have a robust pedal program with almost 200 students registered in grades 2 through 10 in our pedal program. So we are very, very excited. It has been such a collaborative effort between departments, between working groups, with current administrators. We've got some amazing aspiring administrators who are working with us on summer, so we're really excited about that. In just a little bit, you will have the opportunity to look at high school program of studies updates. Middle school program of studies is coming to you for the first time tonight. We are looking forward to having students back with us for 5 days a week in the fall. We're also excited to offer a virtual academy for families who want to remain virtual. I did want to mention one of my appearances here tonight will be to talk about title grants. We are going to see phasing out of some of our 21st century grants this spring and in the summer. And we will use some of our CARES funds to offer similar after-school programming opportunities to address learning loss, provide more inclusive and expansive 21st century-like experiences for all students, and we will work closely with the City of Lynchburg Procurement Department. We'll put out a request for proposals for after-school programming options like we did for summer programming. We look forward to continuing our work with many organizations throughout the city to reach more students in the upcoming years. Even though the funding and/or the grant title may be different, our need to work with organizations in the city is still there, and we look forward to partnering with some of the same organizations and even more organizations as we work to serve as many students through after-school programs as possible. When you see our title grant applications, I hope that you noticed that our priorities are reflected in those grant applications. We're talking a lot about Tier 1 instruction. Tier 1 instruction is classroom instruction. The magic happens in the classroom. I got a little teary-eyed when I heard Aaron Reed talk about what he and his colleagues have done this year. And my eyes have leaked a little bit every time I've seen videos and every time we've walked in buildings this year. Our teachers have gone above and beyond for our students. And oftentimes they talk to blank screens for a little while and then the pictures would come up on the other end of a Zoom. And we want to make sure that we always recognize that the magic happens in that Tier 1 classroom. So we're focusing on classroom instruction as much as possible next year. We will continue to rely on PALS and IXL diagnostic assessments next year to measure student growth. We've really had to focus on local assessments in the absence of SOLs in 2020, and it's given us so much more leverage to measure student growth by the week, the month, and not just the year. C&I will continue to work collaboratively. I see LaTanya Brown's name up on Zoom right now. We have worked so tirelessly on grants like Title IV, where multiple departments work together to serve our students. And we are really trying to talk about departmental priorities and make sure that we are recognizing what we need to do to move our students forward. We're going to focus on literacy and numeracy, definitely focus on middle school improvement, writing, on-time graduation, making sure that we're looking at current data and that we are addressing underrepresented populations through the PEDAL program. We are consistently looking at ways to support current programming. So when you see the grant applications, we are making sure that we have layers of support embedded in the school, layered in administration positions. We want to make sure that we are living out the vision and mission of every student by name and by need. We are wrapping up the gifted review process. I wanted to let you know that the gifted review process will be a little bit later this year. Students will find out about gifted selection during the month of June. We will continue to offer some gifted opportunities in the summer. We're going to embed some instructional coaching opportunities, some STEM activities. We're going to look for student potential. We're looking for student growth. We are going to constantly look for ways to give students opportunities when we're meeting students where they are. That doesn't necessarily mean go back to students who are below grade level. We want to make sure we're responding to students who are above grade level as well. So we are busy and we are excited about a lot of the summer opportunities and opportunities in the fall. How was that for a flyover?
Thank you, Dr. Jordan. Thoughts of the board, Dr. Carter.
Thank you for the presentation. I have one question regarding the LCS YMCA Power Scholars. And it says students served. I've heard from a lot of parents, several, that is this just for the students needing additional support in reading and math? What about students who don't? Will they have an opportunity to participate in this type of programming?
At the YMCA Power Scholars locations, we invited students, but we still have a little bit of wiggle room, not for transportation, so don't let Mr. Gatsky get me. But if parents reach out to the C&I department or to the school, we have a few open spaces in Power Scholars. Typically, Power Scholars would be for students who need remediation in English or math. But if parents have a need or a want, we'll do our best to accommodate in spaces where we still have a few openings.
Not just for that, but any of these openings, because I know some people that they want their children in school, but they don't need any remedial type of learning, but they want to have them in a program.
And the PEDAL program is probably a better fit for students who are not looking for remediation but need more enrichment opportunities. And I would urge any families who are still in need of summer programming to reach out either to the schools or to the C&I department.
And just one more. Now, the dates, are they able to come any weeks, or or is it intended that they come each week, each of these weeks?
Each week, as many days as possible. If parents have family vacations that they've already scheduled, then the programs will work with them, but we would like to have students as many days as possible.
And some say cost. One says there's no cost. What about the others?
The only cost this year is for the online courses on the very last page.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Carter. Any further? Dr. Gupta.
So, Dr. Jordan, if I hear the number right, 1,600 students have signed up for the summer program.
Yes, sir.
So what happened to the others 7,000 plus students? Was it voluntarily? They sign up, or you asked them to sign up? Because we were worried about students falling behind due to remote learning all year long. So how come the population is so small of students who are signing up for summer?
This is a very robust summer school program in contrast to what we've offered in the past. We still have some openings, and we will continue to add as we are able. But we definitely invited students that we felt had the greatest need. And there will still be students who have needs, and we will have to address those as we are aware of them. But this is big.
If I could just piggyback on Dr. Gupta's question, and my two daughters are going to be a part of this, and I'm very appreciative. Just want to make sure, as we continue to get this out, will there be bus transportation available for those who need it if they have not already registered but can register? And I understand from last time that you do what you can, but I'm just for the public's benefit.
We will do our absolute best to make sure that transportation is provided to all families who need it. I don't know if Mr. Gadsky, would you add anything?
That is correct. We will do our best to provide transportation to anybody that wants to attend these programs. I have to admit that it is tight. We have our routes all set up and ready to go. And adding people at this point is, it's an inconvenience, quite frankly, and buses are full and drivers are sparse, but we will get them on a bus.
Wow, and thank you for articulating in the manner that you did, and that's just another way of showing how LCS is really trying. And I would agree that this handout is reflective of a robust activity, and I just want to make sure that every kid that can possibly be involved would be involved. And if there are other ways that the community can get involved, and I don't know all of the protocols on that, but if I don't know, faith-based community, other organizations that may have ways to help get kids in the way that that might be acceptable, we want to get as many kids as possible participating in this process that may need it. Dr. Gupta, you had a follow-up?
I understand the constraint in busing, but if I'm a parent who I think my child needs to attend its summer school, but I'm hearing is right now that was not the choice. So we pick the students who will be attending the summer school. So if the parent wanted to express their choice, that was not entered.
We've invited students to attend programs, but we've also left registration open for weeks and weeks and taken as many parent requests as possible. So I think we've done a good balance of both.
It wasn't just selection only. I mean, we targeted some students purposefully, but parents could register.
What was the response rate for students you invited versus who signed up? I'm sorry, I'm going into statistics, but that gives me an idea what the total percentage acceptance rate.
I don't have that in front of me.
We can send that to you.
All right, thank you, so noted. Come right to you, Dr. Carter. Anyone who has not spoken would like to make any comment on this matter? All right, Ms. Evans?
Say something quickly to Dr. Gupta. Having a student in Lynchburg City, we got information over and over again we have about the summer programs through emails and phone calls and messages in the parent portal. So parents have gotten the information. So I just want to put that out there that y'all did a really great job of getting it to parents who wanted. If you weren't selected, you did have the ability to sign up. Clear.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Anyone else? Dr. Carter.
Well, okay, because I heard that some kids, especially younger students, weren't able to get in, or they were told that their schools probably wouldn't be able to take them because of the number of students that were already selected to go. So that's not the case.
If you have names, or if we have those families, I would really, really like for folks to reach out, because we have some available spaces at a lot of our programs right now. So even though some of our programming may be full, we have some availability at other locations. And we are running many different opportunities here. So we have 2 non-21st century summer programs that we may have some availability.
Thank you, Dr. Carter, for noting that and getting those names to Dr. Jordan. That's very important. Anyone else on this matter? Well, thank you, Dr. Edwards. Thank you, Dr. Jordan, for updating us on this very important matter, and let us do all we can to get everybody that we can get involved in our robust summer school program offerings. All right, thank you so much. Dr. Sinha, would you, unless there's something, yeah, Dr. Sinha?
No, everything's looking really good. Cases are down. The numbers are a little bit wonky this week because it looks like they, VDH made some data corrections, but they just allocated them all in this week, so it looks like we had negative number of cases. So that's why the dashboard looks a little weird. But all in all, things are looking good. Vaccinations are on track, and I realized looking at this, I didn't paste the new I have two pie charts now because now we have children 12 to 17 getting vaccinated.
Yes.
But the adults 18 plus, that's still the chart from last week. I apologize for that. I will change that and update it and send that out. But we do have a small fraction of children who are starting to come in and get vaccinated. And when you consider, especially with the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines, it's about a 6-week process till you're fully immune, I guess. 4-week just for the 2 shots. So that's quite a time span. So the fact that we're already at those levels is pretty encouraging, I would think. So keep it up, Lynchburg. It's looking good.
Any questions for Dr. Sinha? Dr. Sinha, thank you for providing this information for us throughout this process. Dr. Brennan as well. This has really been a wonderful journey of watching people who lead with care to get us through this in a magnificent way. And I know y'all gonna get tired of me asking you to clap. If you don't want to clap, that's fine. But I'm just thankful. Let's give all of our staff for getting us through this in the manner in which we have. Our schools have been open, and now they will be open 5 days a week. Under unfinished business, there are now some action items, board, that we do need to take care of, and so please let us govern these matters accordingly. Item 3, I3, updates to the high school program of studies. Dr. Edwards, if you could bring on our presenter.
Yep, and Dr. Jordan is back up at the podium to just give us a quick summary.
Good evening. We brought the high school program of studies to you earlier this spring. We have some updates. Updates include some new dual enrollment courses. We've got an addition of virtual academy, some CTE changes that are related to our Title II monitoring visit, and a report called the IPAL report, which talks about teacher licensure. We've got the proposed African American history course in here. Lynchburg City Schools has always had an African American Studies elective. This is the proposed VDOE Virtual Virginia Partnership, which would be a blended learning course taught by an LCS teacher using some of the Virtual Virginia modules. The second page, the communications system course, that's a completer sequence for CTE, and cybersecurity just has an updated title. Do you have any questions about these updates?
All right, members of the board, any questions, Dr. Gupta?
Maybe Ms. Locarno, so you can answer. This dual degree program, do we cover their tuition or the students pay their tuition, and how much it is per credit hour?
We pay the fees for the dual enrollment.
So the LCS covers the tuition? Yes. And they all go to CVCC, or there are other associate degree programs?
These are separate courses. 2 of these courses replace the Teachers for Tomorrow sequence. So that's through the University of Lynchburg. We typically do dual enrollment through CVCC.
Dr. Brennan.
Dr. Jordan, thank you so much for this nice summary to tune us into the different important aspects. Just two questions. One is that under the Central Virginia Governor School, it looks like grades and SAT requirements were deleted or modified from that area. Is that a change in philosophy or direction there, or what? Do you know the background for that?
On the course offerings or in the selection
application
process?
For application to the Central Virginia Governor School.
Let me check on that.
Okay.
And I will get back with you.
Right. It was the area on page 67 related to that. And then also on 70 and 71, they had changes in the NCAA, NIA athletic eligibility standards.
And I think that is because it changed so often that our program of studies was not always reflective of those changes. So we are now going to link to the most current NCAA.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Any other questions or discussion from the board concerning agenda item I3? Dr. Nilles?
You have a question on the one dual enrollment that replaced the future teachers. Seems odd for juniors and seniors to go through a course where they're being they call it training, but it strikes me as more of indoctrination when you start talking about implicit, explicit bias, and then a final section on candidate self-reflection strikes me as being a semester-long struggle session. I think this is pushing a particular point of view. I'm a little disappointed to see us as a public school system. This is being offered, frankly. I would propose make a motion to delete this particular course from the high school program of studies.
There's a motion, and restate your motion so that we can get a second for it, Dr. Nilles.
To delete course 6339 AD, Human Diversity in American Schools. It's a semester-long course.
There's a second to the motion.
I second.
Been seconded by Dr. Gupta. Now we will move into discussion on the motion. If the maker of the motion would like to have further statements at this time in regards to the motion that is now on the floor for action.
Well, you know, the course descriptions talks about intersectionality and identity, equality, equity, inequity, implicit bias, explicit bias, acceptance, tolerance, advocacy, social justice. And this is supposed to be an introductory, I guess, survey level course for future teachers. It's through the University of Lynchburg. I support their they're offering the course if they feel that's important, but I think it's incompatible with a public school system because of the particular take on social and social issues. I mean, anyway, so.
Thank you, Dr. Nilles. And the second of the motion, Dr. Gupta, would you like to give in the reflections?
And I've said it before too, we have several schools in town and we need to involve everybody. When you talk equity in these courses, we need to be equitable in our using their expertise. So hopefully we'll expand our wings and go to different schools and colleges to see how we can collaborate in terms of courses.
Thank you, Dr. Gupta. Is there any further discussion? I don't know if administration would like to make any comments in relationship to the course offering 6339 AD.
Doctor?
All right, Dr. Carter would like to speak.
Not that I'm speaking for the University of Lynchburg, but I think one of the things that the university or most colleges now and universities are looking at for their teachers, because they're going into school systems with a lot of diversities and with some have majority African Americans, some may even have other students, and so they try to give them a global view of everything that they may encounter so that when they come, then they'll be more knowledgeable regarding different cultures, different ethnicities, different backgrounds, and that's just an exploration. I don't think they're trying to indoctrinate anyone or to get anyone, but just as an awareness that we have various individuals out there, and everyone's not like you, and maybe different races, different religions. And just to bring an awareness, I don't think it's a doctrination course.
All right. Coming back to you, Dr. Gupta. Anyone who has not spoken on this matter would like to speak? Dr. Brennan?
I agree with Dr. Carter. I think there was a reference to the fact that the African American history studies was sort of I think it needed to be an introductory course to that. And I think that course is also very important and a jump-off point where we're looking at what the history of the African American impact is on our society and on our culture and how important that is. And I think that this extension into the education course at Lynchburg College is also, as Dr. Carter pointed out, really trying to make people more aware of the fact that there is diversity within the schools, and it's important to recognize that.
All right, Ms. Evans?
I agree with both of these statements. I do think it's a very introductory level class that is trying to show different views of what you do face when you're in education. And I don't think it's saying you have to agree or disagree. It's explaining this is what you're going to face. And I think it's appropriate.
I would like to go on record, and I do support the fact that we need to look at all of our universities locally when we're preparing these opportunities. Dr. Gupta?
Well, I agree with Dr. Carter. Cultural immersion is important, but the best place for cultural immersion is a local HBCU or regional HBCUs, where you learn about the history because they have experienced it firsthand. So.
If there's no further discussion, what we're voting on is not the program of studies in its entirety. We are voting now to remove human diversity in American schools. And if you vote yes, this course offering will be removed from the high school program of studies. If you vote no, then that would mean you want it to remain, and then we would go back to a discussion on the program of studies in its entirety. If all are clear, we're going to ask now for the clerk to call the roll.
School Board Member Evans.
So no.
School Board Member Carter.
No.
School Board Member Brennan.
No.
School Board Member Dr. Coleman.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Nellis.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Sinha.
No.
School Board Member Dr. Gupta.
Yes.
School Board Member Mr. Harvey.
No.
The final count.
Final count, Madam Clerk.
5 no, 3 yes.
All right, so the motion fails. The course will remain. And now we are back on the discussion on the program of studies in its entirety. Is there a motion to approve the high school program of studies?
I move that we approve the high school program of studies.
All right, is there a second? Motion by Dr. Carter, is there a second?
A second.
Thank you. That was not a fast second. Thank you, Dr. Brennan, for that. Any further questions or discussion on the high school program of studies? Hearing none, Madam Clerk.
Actually, I have a question on the
please,
African
go right
American
ahead, Dr. Mills.
program. There's a substantial, basically total rewrite of the course description. Is a syllabus for the course available? This is going to be obviously of a lot of public interest. I think it would be beneficial for the division to be completely open about reference materials, what's being taught, what modules from Virtual Virginia are being used. I don't doubt that there's some worthwhile stuff, but I don't doubt that there's some pretty controversial stuff. And I think we need to be completely open about it.
We have a draft course outline that we can share. It's visible on the VDOE website. We are currently in the preliminary stages of reviewing resources to go along with the course. As I said, Lynchburg City Schools has had an African American Studies elective for a number of years.
Understood, but that was also essentially a homegrown course.
Correct. So this is the first time that we are using guidance from the VDOE. So again, we have draft course outline.
But those are VDOE draft course outlines.
And we would follow that as our model, as we would other SOLs and core courses.
Is this an SOL?
No, it's
No,
not.
this is an elective. So we can follow 100% or 1% of the VDOE guidelines. Is that a fair statement?
We have some say
I mean, you get
how
into the
we-
guidance and guidelines, and it's like, all right, what?
Yes, to some degree, yes. We are limited in some aspects of curriculum, course materials, supplemental materials, but certainly.
So some of this is mandatory.
In terms of the course, yes.
In terms of what's presented in the course, it's mandated by the state.
To the degree, yes.
To-
Yes.
Okay, I'm not just saying some. Okay.
All right. Dr. Nillis, did you get all of your answers that you needed?
Yeah, I'd feel more comfortable knowing what the exact plans were at this point, so.
All right. Dr. Carter.
I'm assuming that the school will take the same stance regarding the curriculum and the books and all, and like we do with the other books, math and science, and that those will be for people to look at, and or is that the way we're going about this for the African American course study?
Are you talking about the textbook?
The text.
It's the same review process as we would use for any other text.
That's what I assumed, all right.
And, you know, we're discussing high school program of studies. I want to remind board members it is okay for you to share your thoughts. I mean, this is why we are here, and that's our responsibility. We do know today is a historic day, Tulsa dynamic, and what we teach, what we don't teach, all of those things are critical to our students being able to be all that they can be. And so, you know, it's just very important, and I'm grateful that we are offering and will be offering more opportunities to get the full story shared to all of our students in every way we can concerning all of our various groups. Ms. Evans?
I just had a quick thing. You know, everything I read from the Department of Education from this course, if you go to their website and read everything, it does have a long list of suggested material to use within the classroom. So you can, any person can go to that and look at every suggestion. It's not that Lynchburg has to use them all, and I'm assuming we could add some of our own as well, but there is a list there that you can go in and read exactly what their suggestions are. So it's a really great resource if you really want to sit down and learn exactly what the suggestions are for this course. It's all there on their website.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Dr. Nillis?
Yeah, I just want to be clear. I want to make sure that the students are being instructed in history and the real history. You know, not a narrative, not some, you know, take on history, which, I mean, frankly, we've all had that experience, I think, as elementary students. And but, you know, a frank, objective, and honest history. And I think that's why I'm asking, well, not I think, that's why I'm asking, what are the resources we're using, and what's the course, what's the course going to be look like? So, you know, everybody can see.
Thank you, Dr. Nillis. Dr. Carter?
Well, I had the privilege of being on a webinar regarding this, the course of studies, and it didn't seem controversial to me. It was just going to talk about history as we do with any other history, and we haven't always been given a complete picture, so hopefully this will help. And it hasn't always been a two-sided view. Sometimes it was just a one-sided view. So this hopefully will help to make it all equitable, and we'll be able to see all contributions to history, which is the beauty of it all. So I don't see where, I was just surprised to see some of the opposition to this, and our own superintendent and also some other teachers and other prominent figures in the state said on that. And when listening to it, I didn't become upset or think that we're going to try to indoctrinate anyone or be biased in that presentation. It's going to be presented as history, which is great.
Thank you, Dr. Carter. Ms. Evans?
I have one last thing to say, and it goes along with this, that, you know, we have taught history the same way in Lynchburg City in the same courses. And for this to be an elective course to me in African American history, and if you look at the key points, and I wrote them down, of this class, to learn about contributions, to learn in-depth history about African Americans, and it's an elective, and we've done history the same way, I struggle too to see where the fear of this class is coming from, that it could be teaching people to believe one thing over another. I think it's very much a much needed class for people, and to me, it's about time. That's it.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Mr. Harvey.
I agree with a lot of the comments that have been made tonight. I think what's critical here is we have to understand that this is a controversial subject in our nation, just discussing this. And so I think it would behoove LCS to communicate with our community as much as we can. We have been shared points of access to go to the DOE website to look at these, to understand that these classes can be beneficial to our students. And I just would hope that we can take every opportunity to be as proactive with sharing the information to the community and fielding the community's questions, because I believe that open sharing of ideas and information will help to keep these programs from being vilified. Because I think we all agree, when we've had the opportunity to look at these programs, we see the benefits from them. But that's because we have had access to a lot of literature and a lot of information and a lot of opposing sides for us to gather our own perspective on this and be able to make our own decisions. So I think if we can be proactive in helping the community to be able to find where they can get the same information that's been shared with us, I think that will help, and help everyone have a comfortable sense of this moving forward.
Thank you, Mr. Harvey. If there's no further discussion on the matter at hand, is there a motion to approve the studies?
Dr. Carter.
We already have. Who seconded?
Dr. Brennan.
All right, good. There's no further questions or discussion. We will now be voting on the high school program of studies. If you vote yes, then that would be an action item to support the program of studies. A no would be against the program of studies, and we would have to have further discussion. And so, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
School Board Member Evans.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Carter.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Brennan.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Coleman.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Nellis.
No.
School Board Member Dr. Sinha.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Gupta.
Yes.
School Board Member Mr. Harvey.
Yes.
7-1, motion carries.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Jordan and Lynchburg City Schools, as we continue to move forward in this very important way of providing the best possible public education we can for our kids and utilizing the whole community to help get it done. I'm excited about this. I would like to ask the board at this time, is it your pleasure to take a 5-minute break, or should we press on? I see at least one head nodding. So we are going to take a 5-minute break, and then when we come back, we'll go right into another action item and should be able to move nicely to completion. We will reconvene in 5 minutes. Again, thank you, board members, for the manner in which we are conducting business tonight. And we will now move to section I-4, which is our operation policy update. And this is coming to us for action tonight. And it is around family and community engagement. And we are going to ask that our superintendent would lead us in bringing on the presenter and any further clarifications to what we're doing in this area. Dr. Edwards?
Yep, absolutely. And I think Ms. Reeves may be on Zoom, but I'm going to confirm that.
I'm here.
Okay. So these policies were brought to the board last time, and they are coming back. And Ms. Reeves, is there anything that you want to add or share?
No additional information from before.
I just will comment on, is it KN? And this is sometimes what VSBA does when they strike language. It doesn't mean that they're necessarily saying that folks such as school bus drivers or people who are in charge of visiting or security staff are not able to have this information. It's just that calling them out by name leaves out others by name, and especially during a time where we have different people and positions and titles, it just makes sense to take out the titles and talk more about the process. So,
all right. Board, this is before us tonight for action. The chair recognizes Dr. Nilles.
Well, I mean, I went over this and I pretty much had the same reactions regarding KN and KNA. It's unusual that the SBA deletes the policy, and I don't really recall the basis for that. And typically it's covered elsewhere, but you know, not being part of the policy group discussion, and I mean, I think that was missed. So, I mean, I'd like to hear hear that, you know. And I don't know if Attorney Towns is available. I don't.
I am available, and Board Member Nilles, the deleted section of KNA has been included in section KN. There is a new section in KN that speaks to that level sex offender, a violent sex offender, which is now categorized as a tier 3 offense. That information is now in KN. So that is what has caused the deletion of the KNA policy.
So they've essentially been combined.
Yes.
And the rewording is due to changes in state code, or?
Yes, the term violent sex offender has been removed, and now that a person who would have been categorized as a violent sex offender has now been categorized as committing a tier 3 offense. And someone who has committed a tier 3 offense, just as a violent sexual offender, is not allowed on school ground. So it's just a change in name in the state code. However, the intention and the type of crime is the same, and the type of offender is still barred from school property. The additions in KNA speak to the tier 1 and 2 sex offenders. If you see, there's a section for parents who are tier 1 and tier 2 sex offenders, the process by which they could be considered to come to a school event or on school property. And then there is a section for non-parents, everyone else who fits into that tier 1, tier 2 sex offender registration. And that is a person who is a non-violent sex offender on tier 1 and tier 2.
Thank you, Attorney Towns, for that clarification. Dr. Nilles, any further concerns?
I mean, to, I guess, summarize, this is really a reorganization and realignment with the state code, and there's not any loosening
Yes.
of protections
No,
for
it's the
children.
same as the protection is the same, and now as Dr. Edwards mentioned, I believe the VSBA, they use some language that we don't use in Lynchburg City Schools, and I imagine they've decided for each school division to decide to use the language as appropriate. However, Lynchburg City Schools will have a procedure and a procedure in place on how to handle the Tier 1 and Tier 2 sex offenders, and the policy calls for that. It's just not outlined with the names of positions.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Towns, and I hope that the community will so note those appropriate clarifications now included in KN. Dr. Carter.
I have one question regarding this policy under visitors to school. Parent is monitored, and my question is, and I know we have a monitoring process, is it a consistent process across school divisions, and are we using the matrix that was set up?
So we have not put the matrix in play yet because we have not had visitors and volunteers in our schools due to COVID, and we've also shifted personnel from when the matrix was approved way back when. We also need to go back and shore up the language because it does reflect KNA in our matrix. So that is on our next steps to do that and talk about how we're going to do that. The other thing was, if you remember, part of the matrix was training all of the folks who would be at that level of scrutiny in terms of making those decisions. And again, because our focus has been more on return to learn and not on visitors and volunteers, we have not done that yet either. So that is on our next steps.
And understandably so, Dr. Edwards. Yeah. All right. I certainly will be supporting this with the clarifications that have been made. Is there a motion at this time to approve the operation policy updates in I-4?
I move to approve the operational policies.
Right, there's a motion on the floor by Dr. Carter. Is there a second? Second by Dr. Gupta. Any further questions or discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Scoop up Member Evans?
Yes.
Scoop up Member Dr. Carter?
Yes.
Scoop up Member Dr. Brennan?
Yes.
Scoop up Member Dr. Coleman?
Yes.
Scoop up Member Dr. Nillis?
Yes.
Scoop up Member Dr. Sinha?
Yes.
Scoop up Member Dr. Gupta?
Yes.
Scoop up Member Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
8-0, motion carries.
Thank you. Section item 5, governance policy updates for discussion. Dr. Edwards.
Yes, our policy group met on May 17th to discuss the two policies, BBBB. Student rep, Mrs. Morrison, did give us a lot of information for consideration for how we move forward with our student rep policy, as well as information from a staff member who wanted to share, which we will meet again to discuss that. So at this point, we do not have that policy, BBBB, to bring forward. BCEZ, school board committees, last meeting we had proposed adding a student achievement committee. I brought to you a proposal, with schedules and explanation, and at that time, there were different questions and different concerns. So again, at this point, the work group recommends postponing doing anything with adding another school board committee at this time.
Thank you, Doctor. That was well said. That reflects our discussion, Dr. Gupta.
Are you looking at all the committees or just only the new committee?
For the proposal was to adjust by that policy by adding a new committee. So since we did not make any changes to that policy, we did not review the other committees in that policy.
So could I request, is it possible to review, because I have certain suggestions?
For the other committees in that policy?
You're referring to our Finance Committee, our
Yes.
Legislative Advocacy Community Relations Committee, and our Student Discipline Committee. Madam Clerk, so note those, and we certainly will hear them at the appropriate
Can you send those suggestions to me?
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. Then that, of course, is for discussion. And of course, the members of that work group and the entire board, we need to understand that it's very important that the board be unified, and we don't want to do anything that would not be unified. And so we'll come back later. Thank you, Dr. Edwards. You explained that beautifully. All right, I-6. Okay. Human resource policy updates. Dr. Edwards, you can bring on the presenter.
Yep, Ms. Caldwell is actually on vacation. Attorney Towns is here as well, but this is something that we brought to you last week, and last month, and it is a combination of the two forms that we use to report discrimination and harassment. Anything with a J is for students, anything with a G is for staff, and we have combined it to one form so that it is not confusing for the end user. They can just pick that one form, fill it out, and we can separate it to send it to either student services or HR.
All right. So this item is for action. What is the pleasure of the board?
I move that we approve it.
Second.
All right, been moved by Dr. Gupta, seconded by Dr. Carter. Any further questions or discussion? Hearing none, we are now voting to approve the human resource policy updates. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Scoop up Member Evans.
Yes.
Scoop up Member Dr. Carter.
Yes.
Scoop up Member Dr. Brennan.
Yes.
Scoop up Member Dr. Coleman.
Yes.
Scoop up Member Dr. Nillis.
Yes.
Scoop up Member Dr. Sinha.
Yes.
Scoop up Member Dr. Gupta.
Yes.
Scoop up Member Mr. Harvey.
Yes.
Motion carries 8-0.
All right, I-7 is instruction and program policy, and this is for action tonight. Somewhat could have been on the consent, but we brought it here. Dr. Edwards, if you could help us with that. And
Absolutely. So again, these are policies that were on the agenda for first read last month, and I know I saw Director Brown on Zoom. Are you still there, Director Brown?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I don't think there were any questions or any follow-up to these policies. Was there anything else that you wanted to add, Director Brown?
No, ma'am.
all right, then we have before us the action items and the VSBA updates and all listed before you. What is the pleasure of the board? Is there a motion?
I move that we approve.
All right, the motion's been made by Dr. Gupta. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, Dr. Carter, seconded by Dr. Carter. Any further questions or discussion? Hearing none, although, well.
No, wait, no, you gotta give me a chance.
I'm so sorry. Go right ahead, Dr. Nillis.
The material or the scope covered by JGD, JGERZ, where did that move to? I know I should know, but.
Would you say that one more time? Would you ask?
The student suspension policy, and I know with the state changes in discipline guidance and all that, all of that has changed. I just am curious as to where in the policy manual that's moved to.
That's in policy JGD, JGE.
I should have known that. Gosh. Okay.
No,
thank you.
All of it's helpful, Dr. Nillis. Any further questions or discussion on the motion? If there's no other board member, please, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Scoop up Member Evans.
Yes.
Scoop up Member Dr. Carter.
Yes.
Scoop up Member Dr. Brennan.
Yes.
Scoop up Member Dr. Coleman.
Yes.
Scoop up Member Dr. Nillis.
Yes.
Scoop up Member Dr. Sidhar.
Yes.
Scoop up Member Dr. Gupta.
Yes.
Scoop up Member Mr. Harvey.
Yes.
Motion carries 8-0.
Thank you, board. We'll now move into section J, which is our new business section and initial readings and reports. Item 1, fiscal management policy updates. And Dr. Edwards, you can bring on Kim Laconich.
Okay, and I would like to turn it over to Ms. Laconich to give a brief overview. This is for first reading.
Correct. So on May 10th, the Fiscal Management Policy Work Group met. We went over several policies, and at the conclusion of that meeting, it was decided to bring 3 to the full board. 2 of them are new. It is the DIA reporting per pupil costs. The second new one to LCS is policy DL, which is a payroll procedures. And the third is just a VSBA update to a paragraph heading, and that was DJF. Again, it is for first reading, if you have any questions.
All right, I know this was a lot before you. Dr. Brennan?
Mr. Connors, can you just explain a little further the new reporting per pupil costs, exactly what that is and what that will require and what the timing of that will be?
So we have actually been working on that in preparation of when if it gets approved, but a lot of school divisions are doing this anyway. And we actually have this on our website, but it's sort of within the budget book, but it would just be on the website, it would say what your current year actual per pupil expenditure was, what your the prior year actual, your current year proposed, and then the proposed for the following year. It would show your local and your state, and you have the option of putting federal in there as well.
So is that a calculation of what we receive from the state total funding, from the city total funding, and then federal?
Correct. Just divided by the number. We would use the March 31st ADM to calculate the per pupil expenditure.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Harvey.
I assume that this policy is something that since we're adding this, that we feel is beneficial for some reason. I mean, I struggle with this because, simply stated, you can take how many students we have enrolled, divide that into the number of our budget, and get the average cost per pupil. I don't see that information is necessarily helpful. I do feel like that if we had more of a detailed breakdown exemplifying what types, based on our student population, for instance, we had the question earlier today about what the added cost for dual enrollment. In addition to GovSchool, some of these other costs per student. I think that the average cost per student is somewhat of an arbitrary number, but having a more detailed breakdown of examples of types of students, it would provide a better insight into what our overall costs are than just using an average.
Someone like to respond?
One of them.
Ms. Evans?
I was just going to say, I had the same kind of question of, it doesn't show any, you could have a student with special needs, and as a public school, we have to provide for those needs, which totally changes what the cost is. So I didn't know if this came out of, did somebody ask us to look at this and add this? Was this, where'd this come from?
It comes from VSBA when they send us policy updates and new policies, and they try to stay current with code. Some remember our original policies were the numerical ones, so we spent considerable time over the last 3 years shifting from the old numbered policies to the VSBA policies, and then some policies we didn't have a matching policy for. Some of them are just now coming back around. So every time we get a new one, we do bring it to the group for consideration and discussion.
And I understand that. I just do think it can be somewhat, you look at that number, I think as an outsider just reading it, this is the average cost for Lynchburg, but you're right, it doesn't take into account everything that goes into that. So I do worry about that too.
So noted, Mr. Harvey, for further review. Anyone else on this matter? Dr. Brennan?
I think those are great points. On one time in the past, we'd actually, and I think there is data that we've seen several years ago that compared different school districts by their ADM, different categories, and the cost, how much they receive from their city, how much they receive from the state, and comparing all the different divisions in the state. I found it to be very helpful as far as what people were getting on different, just overall, and it was apples to apples. It was comparing equally. So I understand how this information is helpful, and I also understand what you all are saying as far as the cost per student will clearly vary. I'm not sure from a logistical point of view how you get that other cost, how you can try to to break that out, to make it be complete, to be able to say what is the cost across the spectrum. So, but I'm all in favor of, but I also am in favor of doing this because I think if nothing else, it gives us a comparison to other school districts in the state that we can look at.
Mr. Harvey?
I just feel like if we are adding a policy, this is our opportunity to expand that policy to be more inclusive of more justifiable data. Again, I feel like this number, you take this number and divide by this number, and it gives you this. And that, I think, can be misleading. If I were looking at the Lynchburg community, and I simply go to the website and I go, okay, this is their cost per student, and this is what somebody else spends per student, I mean, that's a arbitrary comparison. I think that you could exemplify certain student types that you could utilize an average cost. And I'm not saying you have to get into, you know, an extreme amount of detail per student, but you could have student types that you could provide an average cost for, which I think would be more beneficial, because this is something that members of the community have asked about, members of council have asked about, and if we're just taking this average number, it's somewhat arbitrary and can be misleading.
So noted, Mr. Harvey, for further review. Every comment from the board, we're documenting them. Yes, Dr. Sinha.
I agree that it would be instructive to have that kind of breakdown. I'm just thinking from a data perspective exactly how you would arrive at that. And you'd almost, in some ways, have to tie it to services received. So, for example, we put in our budget to hire school psychologists. So let's say we have 10 school psychologists. They cost this in terms of salary, benefits, equipment, blah, blah, blah. How many students do they serve? Is there a, you know, and then you spread those costs, but certainly some students probably use more of those resources than others. So I get the instructiveness of it, but I also can appreciate that trying to break those costs down could be difficult and not quite so easy. I mean, it'd be a real challenge. I think there are ways to approximate it and get closer, but you know, unless you have a cost code for every student of what they use, almost like a medical billing, if you will, of the various services. Do you count students who participate in performing arts as costing more than those who don't, those in sports? I mean, I can just see how it's in defense of the people who run the budget and all this stuff, how you might find it challenging. There are probably ways to do it. It would take a lot of thinking and programming to get it done. And so I just want y'all to appreciate, if I'm understanding the information and how it might be generated, that it's not as straightforward as it may seem.
Thank you, Dr. Sinha.
Yeah, so.
Yeah. So recorded. Dr. Carter?
And I'm thinking that we already have this information. This just needs to be linked, or that some of this information we're looking for that we already have, and that it's already on our sites. The number of students in different things and needing different services. But to ask to put it included in this policy when it really doesn't have to be there, it's a lot to ask.
Right, and we certainly are going to observe the proper wordsmithing of policies. So thank you, Dr. Carter. Any further thoughts? Of course, you can contact individuals pertaining to this for the next meeting. Mr. Harvey?
Then I asked why we would create a policy for this specific issue, and what's the purpose of that? Just, we create a policy to operate by that takes two arbitrary numbers and creates another arbitrary number. I shouldn't say two arbitrary numbers, but takes two numbers and creates an arbitrary number that really doesn't provide any significant data at all.
It's a VSBA policy update provided, and looks like it's trying to meet some state requirement to advertise your average student cost. I think that's it.
That's the major part of it.
All right, so that speaks to the spirit of why, Mr. Harvey, and thank you for bringing that point up and with that insertion, Dr. Nellis. Any further discussion on this matter? This is coming for discussion tonight. We use our normal protocol, and we will work that through, and it'll come before you for a second reading. All right, thank you so much. J2, this matter was presented at a finance meeting, and board members recognized its need to be presented at the board level. And so the facilities update concerning the administration building, Dr. Edwards, if you could lead us in on this one.
Absolutely. As you are aware, we have been experiencing some challenges at the admin building, particularly in the rear sections of the first and second floor. Seems to be the predominant area. And Mr. Gatsky and a whole host of internal and external consultants have been doing multitudes of tests to determine what the cause is. So we just had the latest round of tests, which are included for the board to review on board docs. So I'll ask Mr. Gatsky to give a quick summary of what's in those reports.
Okay. Good evening.
Good evening.
As Dr. Edwards mentioned on the agenda is the attachments that are the results of all the testing that we've done over the last 4 or 5 months. The problem first arose back in middle of January, right after we returned from the winter break. It started in one office area, or at least that's where our first complaints came from, in the special ed office. It quickly moved upstairs to the C&I office space. We did an internal inspection right away. Most of the time when you start getting these complaints, you're looking for mold and mildew. We did not see anything as far as our internal inspections. We decided that we had best call in some experts in the field, and so we did. We called in an environmental service company. They came in, did some testing, again looking for mold and mildew initially, and their testing showed that we had low humidity and also low levels of mold and mildew. Now, mold and mildew will be found in any space at any time. What you hope to find is that in a space that those levels are lower than what they are outside. So if your mold and mildew spore levels are lower inside than they are outside, your heating and air conditioning system is doing what it's supposed to do. It's filtering out those spores. So as a consequence, they said really don't have a problem with mold and mildew. We did some testing for chemicals. That was our next thought. We tested for chemicals. We removed all the chemicals that we possibly could, just leaving basic cleaning supplies. We removed all the disinfectants that we had in there for the pandemic to treat COVID-19. We removed anything that we thought could have been an irritant to anybody. The symptoms people were complaining of were not only things like trouble breathing and whatever, but also burning eyes, rashes on their skin, which normally you would look at, it would be a chemical, a reaction to a chemical in the environment, and we could find nothing. After the first round of testing, We had all of the ductwork and the air conditioning air handlers cleaned. We had a second round of testing come in, and this time I asked them to focus on VOCs, chemicals that could possibly be irritants. And then again, that report came up as basically nothing there, or nothing that would point them to saying this is your problem as far as these health reactions people are having. The company we were using was a local company, and I asked them, I said, well, is there where else can we turn? And they gave me the name of a industrial hygienist out of North Carolina. We contacted him. He reviewed all of the test reports and also the investigative reports that the first company had done. And he came up with no conclusions on that also. He developed a questionnaire that we distributed to all the staff in the building, and we had a good response back. We asked for what kind of symptoms, if they were having symptoms, what kind of symptoms they were having, how often they occurred, where in the building they worked, all of that kind of stuff. The consultant in North Carolina took a look at all that and said there was really nothing here either. There's no patterns or anything like that. We requested that he come up and go through the building and take a look for himself, which he did. He came back, and after that visit, he also did some testing. He took some of his own air samples and whatever. And he called back and he said, I can't find anything. The test results came back basically clean. He did suggest, he said, you've tried everything else. We've replaced some carpet. We've washed the walls. We've, scrubbed everything. He said, but you haven't done anything above the ceiling. He said, I would just recommend that you remove the ceiling and clean above the ceiling very, real well. So we started that about 2 weeks ago. On the second floor, the top floor, there is fiberglass insulation that has been there since the building was built. It is quite dusty, but other than that, it doesn't seem to be the problem. But we are having it removed by a mitigation company so that we're not trying not to contaminate the rest of the building. What we're doing there then is once we get it all removed from the second floor, we will then test again, and hopefully our levels will remain low on everything that we test for. And then went downstairs on the first level, we ourselves, because there is no insulation above there, we think we can go ahead and remove that that ceiling tile and replace those ceilings ourselves, do it in-house, and save a little money. The bottom line is we've done all this work and we still don't know what's causing it, and we still have people having reactions. We had 2 reported last week. So in a way, we're kind of back to square one. The only thing we have not done is remove the drywall from the exterior walls. And I think that's probably going to have to be our next step. To date, we have spent somewhere around $65,000, $70,000 on all of this. And as I said, I don't know that we're any closer than we were back in January. That's the report.
Thank you, Mr. Gasky, and thank you that the full board has heard this, what comments the board members have. After all of this, what you have done is at least brought us to a place where we know the various areas that we've looked at in the next step. And I want to thank Dr. Edwards and the others for caring about our employees, and we've been doing everything that we know to do. And so, board, you've heard this report. Now, what is your thoughts and reflections at this time? Dr. Millis?
So we don't really know what's going on. Is that?
No, sir.
I mean,
Sounds
we're
like to me.
kind of trying to.
I'm pretty confident of what's not going on.
Exactly. We took the obvious sources and
Right.
just sort of ticking those off, and unfortunately, it's taken a lot of time. And is there any intent to? Are people working in the admin building now, or at least some of it?
Some people are working by choice in the admin building, particularly in the front area, front downstairs finance, and front upstairs HR, CNI, student services, special education. Most of my office are graciously being hosted throughout the division by schools at other locations right now while they commence the work.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Gupta?
Thank you for the report. My concern is that we are still finding people who are getting sick. So, and we have people working in that building. So for the health and safety, and I know if I'm an employee working there, I have to be a team player and work, otherwise I'll get in trouble. So have we explored an alternate location till we figure out what is going on and mitigate all those things and nobody's sick?
Yeah, so first let me address the get in trouble, because there's no get in trouble. As a matter of fact, we originally were trying to keep everyone out of the building, and some employees have just chosen, because of the nature of their work and everything that's in that building, to work there and have not been experiencing symptoms. So for the record, any employee who says, and many of them are here, I don't feel comfortable coming in the building. We have found alternate locations for them to work. No one has to work in that building, and no one will get in trouble or any other consequence for not choosing to work in that building while we mitigate and look for the cause of the symptoms.
Thank you for stating that, Dr. Edwards, and that is very true. Ms. Evans?
I just have a question. Is this like a large group of people, like different people, or is it the same in a certain part of the building that it seems to be in?
It's a significant number. I mean, it's not just one or two. We're talking maybe a dozen that are having.
But throughout the building.
Throughout the building that are having, and there are other people that work in those same offices that aren't having anything at all. And then parts of the building, the finance and human resources offices where they're over top of each other, but we've had very few complaints from those areas. So, and the two complaints that we had last week were from staff who just came in for a short term, just pick up some items and left the building. They weren't working there, they were just there for a short period. And they had started experiencing some symptoms. So it's been very frustrating and I mean,
We looked at all medically at the symptoms, and I mean, they're definitely a reaction to something in the environment. Do you know? We know?
Yes, without violating staff
Right.
medical information, but yes. And some staff have been gracious in sharing
Right.
additional in an effort to really help expedite resolve to this. So.
And the questionnaire was very helpful as far as that went. And as far as, it didn't point to any one thing, but it did eliminate some possible causes. And what the questionnaire showed us was that the people that were having reactions were dispersed throughout the building, but also that the reactions were so varied that you couldn't just point to one thing. So mold and mildew, you're generally going to have some respiratory problems and whatever. Chemicals, you're going to have the maybe some of the skin reactions and whatever, the burning eyes and whatever. What's being reported is everything. Some people have problems with breathing, or others with burning eyes, and some are getting rashes. So it's the whole thing. So that's, every time we think oh, well, let's look at this. This is probably it. It hasn't been.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gaskin. And I believe that since this was first identified, that we have been working very diligently to do what's necessary, number one, to keep our employees safe.
Yes.
And I want to thank Dr. Edwards and the team for that. And then we have obviously made steps. There's a next step to this. And I guess my question would be, Mr. Gaskin, when do you anticipate this next step to take place? And then after that is over, at some point, of course, we are enjoying our time at Dunbar and now here at Glass, but I know that this board would love to return to our home in the school board chambers. Do you have any idea about timeline?
Well, I learned of the reactions the staff that had last week just this morning, so we will start. Like I said, the next thing we need to do is remove some of the drywall on the exterior walls, and we'll start that tomorrow. So it's just a matter of process of elimination. And so.
All right, thank you, Mr. Harvey. Anyone else have anything to say? All right, thank you, Mr. Gasky, and this matter did need to be presented to the full board, and thank you for coming tonight and sharing. And if you have further questions or thoughts, please share those with Dr. Edwards pertaining this matter. We will now move to section J3, which is federal programs, and this is discussion. Dr. Edwards for Dr. Jordan.
I am going to invite Dr. Jordan and Ms. Compton, who is our grants coordinator, to come up and talk about the federal Title I, II, III, and IV grants.
Good evening. You have applications for all federal grants in board docs, and you also have a presentation outlining the grants. Would you like us to present the PowerPoint for your review?
I cannot speak for the board, but if you would just give us the pertinent pieces that we need for discussion tonight. I've got a lot of stuff right here, Dr. Brennan, in front of me, and I know I can't look at all that right now. But go right ahead, Dr. Jordan.
For Title I, we can go in order. Title I is our grant that we fund our lead instructional coaches. We fund 70 positions out of Title I. We anticipate that our Title I allocation for next year will go down. So we are conservatively funding things with our grants because our grants are based on ADM and some of our grants are based on private school numbers. And so part of what Ms. Compton does during the year is we manage grants for our local private schools as well. Title I-D is managed mainly out of Director Brown's department. That is, do you want to describe that one, Christy or LaTanya?
I'm here as well. Title I-D is neglected and delinquent. It's housed under the division case manager. With those funds, we provide support to our students that's at the juvenile detention center, as well as some other out places. That grant is funding an academic tutor and also a family person, support person that we work with the group home with to provide support for the students while they're there, and also working with us to keep them on track in terms of their academics and reintegrating them back into their base school upon release at that time. This grant is level funding for this upcoming school year, and this is a reoccurring grant that we've had for several years.
We'll say
it's only the top localities in the state that have a high neglected and delinquent portion, but we anticipate we'll have another grant next year. But this is one that doesn't go to all localities, unlike all the other ones. But based on our numbers, we anticipate that as well. And all the allocations are leveled funding with the exception of Title I, and that was because VDOE reached out to us and kind of gave us preliminary allocations, and they are anticipating it's going to be a reduction. But the other ones we're using leveled funding, and then in the fall, we'll get the actual allocations, and we'll amend as we needed to.
Title II is to prepare, train, and recruit teachers and principals. We went through Title II monitoring recently, and I want to tell you a success from Title II. We really focused on the IPAL report, which is a yearly report of teacher licensure and endorsement. We created a professional library for our staff in LCS, and it's actually run through the library cataloging system. We have a number of Praxis study guides. Praxis are the tests that teachers take to become licensed, endorsed in certain content areas. We've formed peer study groups, and I am so proud of these efforts. I can't remember exactly what the VDOE representative said, but when we watched our numbers of licensed and endorsed teachers climb to 96% in the middle of a pandemic, he commended us on those efforts. So we are committed to offering Praxis study groups for our teachers. We have an English as a second language group running right now. So we encourage our staff, if you have a need, imagine if you have test anxiety and you've been teaching in a certain area for a decade or 2 decades, and someone says, man, we really would like to see you endorsed in, I'll use science as an example. Dr. Edwards knows this one. You may just be endorsed in a certain content area, whereas if you're endorsed in social studies or mathematics, you may be able to teach all the content areas. So we have asked staff members to, in some ways, go outside of their comfort zone, and I am so proud of those Title II efforts. We split fund some of our coaching positions out of Title II because the idea is those folks are helping to mentor, they're working with our teachers, and they're helping us to prepare and train high-quality teachers. 24% of that grant goes to local private schools, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Each of the grants has an enrollment figure, so it's based on the private school enrollment as well as our enrollment, and then it's a calculation for that. So some grants, all the private schools may not participate, some may have all of them participate. That's why you see the different percentages.
Title III is our grant for language instruction for English learners. This grant in total is about $25,000 a year. It's based on English learner data from the previous year. We use this for a supplemental software that keeps our English learner data. We're also going to offer stipends this year for lead ESL teachers, one at the elementary level and one at the secondary level. And we also use some of this for supplies and parent and student outreach. Title IV is a very collaborative grant. Title IV is a relatively new grant in comparison to some of the other grants. We went through Title IV monitoring this year as well. C&I, student services, the technology department, we've worked very collaboratively on our approach to Title IV this year. There is a portion of Title IV that is for well-rounded instruction. There's a portion for safe and healthy students, and there's also a portion for technology. So they encourage that multiple areas in a school division work together in Title IV. We are looking very differently at Title IV this year. We are going to focus on some secondary interventions in Title IV. We have 2 middle schools that are in federal school improvement status. Title I is only for elementary school use, so Title IV, we have turned to more of a secondary approach. Director Brown and I worked very collaboratively with Ms. Compton to talk about and plan for some supports that we need in our secondary school environments. We also wrote in some stipends for folks at each building to help support the pedal program, because we think it's very, very important that we have people in each building who know the students by name and by need to help support potential programming for all of our students. So we're excited about the direction of the Title IV grant. Anything else about Title IV that you want to add?
I think that was great. We heard you when you said you wanted to make sure we were advocating and letting families know about these opportunities. So we're really excited about those pedal advocates. I think that's going to be a good addition. And again, we gave you the full application for each of these. And then we gave you just the PowerPoint just to really give you the flyover version. Here's how much we get. Here's the percentage where it goes to. And we're here to answer any questions you may have. What we would love to have you bring this back to the June work session if possible, or if not, to the July meeting. We do have to submit these to the Virginia Department of Ed once the board has approved.
Yes, and the chair's going to recognize Dr. Gupta, but in terms of the time sensitivity, just want to make sure I'm clear. Are you saying that the work session would be appropriate, or we could wait until the July meeting?
I would feel a lot better if we could get them approved at the work session and submit them by the July 1st deadline.
Yes.
Would
right.
you?
All right, thank you.
I don't like to be late.
Yeah, thank you very much. Dr. Gupta.
And that was my question, because I see in applications the deadline is July 1st, and our board meeting calendar work against it. So I don't know what the pleasure of the board is. Maybe could we make it an action item tonight and move it on?
Dr. Gupta, typically we would like to let people have an opportunity. I think I'm hearing that we'd be okay for June the 15th?
Yes. We would be okay.
Yeah, but your point is taken. If there's someone that would like to entertain your thought, but I'm of the opinion that give people an opportunity to further review and have this on the work session for June the 15th, and that would satisfy their time sensitivity needs and make sure that each board member has had a chance to have any further thoughts about it. Any other discussion on this matter? All right, well, thank you so much. All right, now that moves us in our agenda to J4, I believe, our middle school program of studies. Dr. Edwards.
And it's the Dr. Jordan show, as she stated at the beginning of the meeting. Dr. Jordan, go ahead.
You probably wish you had a remote and you could change the channel. The middle school program of studies is coming to you for a first reading, and we ask that you approve this in July. We have limited changes here. We are going to an A-B block schedule for the next school year instead of a 7-period day. So we took out language having to do with 7 periods. Through course assessment is a pretty big change that's happening at the state level. So anytime a course description talked about an end of the year assessment, we changed it to through course assessments. Are you aware of that proposed change in grades 3 through 8, math and reading? There will be a pre-test, post-test model. So changes were made throughout the document there.
Thank you.
We added the same blurb to describe the virtual academy. We added a description of the pedal program that had been in the high school program of studies but was not in the middle school program of studies, so we added that in. There was an error for a U.S. history course, part 2 was in there, but that was incorrect. Math placement charts, We have expanded math placement options, so the chart wasn't accurate anymore, so we removed the chart. Career tech, it has been changed to career and technical education, and then we've got an updated, kind of more general explanation of CTE disciplines, because sometimes our offerings vary by school to school depending on the licensure or the endorsement of the staff. Do you have any questions that I can answer now?
All right, thank you. Dr. Gupta, then Dr. Nellis.
I just had an editorial suggestion. In your document, Dr. Sinha's district is not mentioned. It just says district, but doesn't have a number for the district. And some of those board members will need a spacing there. Many of them are, I think somebody forgot to put the enter button as they were typing up. Other than that, no question.
Thank you, Dr. Gupta. Dr. Nellis, and then Mr. Harvey.
Yeah, I don't feel like I quite caught the emphasis on through test assessment versus end of year assessment. It sounds like there's, can you explain it and pretend, like I'm a layperson?
Sure, and I can share a superintendent's memo. This is a pretty big announcement at the state level, and it is one of the reasons why at the middle school we did not go towards a traditional block, and we're thinking the AB block for next year so we can see what the through course assessment is going to be like. This does not impact high school. It impacts grades 3 through 8, math and reading. Next year, there will be a pre-assessment at the beginning of the year and a post-assessment like a traditional SOL. So there will be a fall and a spring course. The year after, there will be a pre, a mid, and a post-assessment. And the SOL is given through a Pearson program where we are going to see a partnership between Pearson and a company called NWEA that has marketed MAP testing. So if you've ever heard of MAP testing, the SOL is moving towards a MAP-like SOL test. That's the best way that I can describe it to you. It will be focused more on student growth, but it means a lot more state testing in grades 3 through 8 in math and reading.
So instead of comparing third grade scores from this year with third grade scores from last year, you'll have almost like looking at that cohort throughout that 1 year. So the amount of testing for that grade, instead of just having one test at the end of the year, they'll take 3 tests during the school year to give more of a growth assessment.
There are many benefits to it. There are ways that you can talk about the benefits and the drawbacks of the model. But right now we are going into kind of a gradual change, and they're calling it the through course assessments, but we needed to change the language in the program of studies. We anticipate the first through course assessment being ready sometime in the month of August.
So that's more longitudinal, correct?
Right.
Very good. All right, Mr. Harvey.
Yeah, I have a question regarding the career technical education overview changes. When I look at this program of study document, I would assume that this is something that we would encourage parents to also look at in selecting courses for their students. I have a concern, being that I have a specific interest in career technical education, that by eliminating some of the descriptive notes, I understand the issue with not being able to offer each of those courses at every single school, but I do have some concern that we eliminate some of the more descriptive terms that help students understand what the course might be about. For instance, we now have career investigations, we have business and information technology, we have family and consumer sciences, we have technology education. So at this rate, at this age, I was interested in architecture. So how would I know where that falls under? Technology education, career investigations, business information technology? So I just have a little bit of concern that we would eliminate these more descriptive class titles that might encourage students to see these offerings. I just wonder if it would be possible that we could maybe put a little number beside each one of them to show which schools that these classes are offered at in lieu of just simply eliminating the descriptive titles.
I will make a note of that, and I will reach out to the board with the response. I'll rely on Dr. Bryant for that. We've been working collaboratively with student services with course offerings and course selection. So I think there we would have to rely heavily on the counseling department to make sure that they're making parents aware of what's included under this umbrella. And I think that we have been really specific to a fault, and we've also, we're kind of swinging the other way. So I don't know if there is a middle ground, but I will certainly ask Dr. Bryant if we have any wiggle room for more description.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions or discussion, Dr. Brennan?
Dr. Jordan, first of all, thanks so much for all of your work for the meeting tonight. You've obviously done a lot, and your staff has, so thank you for the presentations, all the ones you've given. They've been very thorough and very complete. So I have just one simple question, just to show I read the material you sent us, so you'll know I did my homework, which was under the examples of options for remediation may include a list of different areas like RISE courses in math, after-school tutoring, in-class differentiation, 21st century, Saturday school and summer school. Do we have all those different items such as Saturday school, and will the 21st century impact on that?
We will have at least one school who still has 21st century programming. Sandusky Middle School is still under 21st century programming through next year. And yes, a middle school has done Saturday school since I've been here in LCS, so it is still an option.
Great, good. Well, thank you so much, and thank you for all your work today.
Thank you for reading it and quizzing me.
Dr. Carter?
Regarding the blocks, A-B block, what would that look like? Is every course in that block or just certain courses?
That would be every course in a block, and they would be alternating. I shouldn't say every course. There may be a couple of skinny blocks. Let me say most all, and I will report back to you if there are some options for skinny blocks, because we could have some performing arts or fine arts in skinny blocks. So I don't want to say that.
So in actuality, if I'm in, so I will have the same students in my class the entire day?
No, you would have four blocks a day.
4 blocks a day, okay.
And at the June 15th work session, there will be
That's correct.
a discussion about the different types of block scheduling, including the AB block for next year.
I'll wait for that.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Pugh. I was just getting ready to state that. And very good, Dr. Carter. All right, any further, Dr. Jordan, did you all have anything additional that you want to say?
My trusty grant coordinator just said, by the way, so you say it.
The request for proposals that we're doing with the city of Lynchburg as part of our stimulus funds, that's the kind of thing we're looking at. We're looking for innovative programs to help meet the students where they are. So if Saturday school is something we identify, that's something that we could definitely pursue with that. And it wouldn't have to be just the schools that had 21st century, like in the past. That was the one, we loved 21st century, but we were limited to just those schools that applied or that were eligible. So this could be potentially summer schools at multiple sites, or potentially Saturday schools, or after school, all those kind of things.
Great, thank you very much.
I'm so glad to hear that. I do recall earlier, maybe this year, Dr. Brennan and I, as each board member has the opportunity, we met with the middle school principals. And I indicated that post-COVID, there's just a lot of dynamics out here that we can look at to kind of help at the middle school level. And so I'm happy to hear about the creativity, which is one of our C's, and whatever we can do and whatever needs to be done differently to get people going. Graduations yesterday really helped me to see how important pre-K, elementary, middle school, right to high school is. And so they ought to all connect. And I do want to finally say I am proud of Dr. Edwards and her work on the African American Commission. And of course, even in the middle school program of studies as we go forward, we need to find ways to make sure that all of our classes are introducing students to all of the various groupings within our citizenry. And so thank you for that. Are there any further questions or thoughts on this matter? This was for discussion tonight, and so it'll come back for us at our next meeting. All right, we are now at superintendent comments.
Certainly. I just want to give a huge, huge thank you to everyone who helped set up chairs and sound and programs and organizing children and everything that went into the outstanding graduation outdoor ceremonies that we had, including Laurel School. We had 3 of them over the past week, and they were each phenomenal. And kudos to the staff for all of their hard work and really thinking through a whole bunch of new challenges, because we have not graduated outdoors. We have not graduated in City Stadium. We weren't sure how the sound was going to work, and I think it worked out very, very well. And I'm just so proud of the staff for doing everything they can to make that culminating activity special for all of our children. We had over 500 children cross the stage and get a diploma. So let me say that again. In the midst of folks who want to talk about how many kids fail, I hope they give as much attention to how many kids walked across that stage and got their diploma this past weekend and last week, including my students at Laurel. Some of them had to be carried across the stage, but they earned a diploma. Some of them could not speak and sign, but they earned a diploma. Some were visually challenged and had help, but they earned a diploma. And that speaks volumes to what our kids accomplished during this year in the middle of a pandemic that affected the entire world, that we have 500 young people who chose to say, I'm going to do it. And they did. And those 500 young people had staff who cared, who made tons of home visits and tons of phone calls and just really worked with kids. And I don't know if board members, when you were there, if you could see some of the teary eyes of some of the staff members, even some of the administrators, the well-felt hugs, the feeling of success and just, yes, you did it. If you were close enough to hear our children, to see their smiles as they earned their diplomas, it was something to see. And it is a very memorable graduation because it has been a hard year. So despite all the naysayers, there was a lot of success in Lynchburg City Schools. And there are a lot of children who are off to their next. We saw 2 of them tonight, or at least one of them who graduated, who are off to their next adventure, thanks to the care and concern of all of our staff, which I so appreciate, because this could have been very wrong for us. This could have been a lost generation of kids, and it was not. They had fortitude, they persevered, and it was absolutely wonderful. And what a great feeling to celebrate with families, outdoors. We didn't have the limited ticket space. Pictures were taken, and most of all, the rain held off.
That's right.
While we did it. Somebody was looking out for us as we had wonderful celebration. I think we need to stay focused on those faces of our children as we, the adults, make decisions. Sometimes we forget who we're making decisions for. And we need to remember those little faces that are our children here at Lynchburg City Schools. They don't all look like us. They don't all talk like us. Some of them can't talk at all. They all can't walk. But that's okay. They're still Lynchburg City Schools students. And every Lynchburg City Schools student deserves a high-quality education and to be able to walk away and say, I matter. The contributions of people like me matter. And that's what we're trying to do here in Lynchburg City Schools. We want to make sure that we tell our children, you matter. We show our children, you matter. We provide experiences for our children that say, you matter. And by you, I mean everybody. Not just a select few, but all of our students. And all of our students deserve that excellent education. So I just want to say thank you to every single LCS staff member, family member, community member who walked along that journey with us to tell our kids, you matter, because they do. And we will not stop creating experiences for our children and making sure that we continue to tell our children from a very young age, you are special and you matter, and you can be anything that you want to be, and we here support you. Thanks.
Well said, Madam Superintendent. We'll now move to our board comments, and we will start with School Board Member Harvey.
Thank you. I'll try to touch on a few items that I'd like to share. I first want to piggyback off of what Dr. Edwards said. I was lucky enough to attend both the Heritage and EC Glass graduations and was awe-inspired by our students and their resilience. The speakers were just incredible, really inspiring. The students, amazing when they walked across the podium. As Dr. Edwards mentioned, one student had certain challenges and, just surpassed those challenges, and it was just very much an inspirational moment. I wanted to say thank you to the administration from both schools, and you guys did an awesome job. I think we have started a new tradition in LCS. I loved the venue. I thought it was impressive, and it was sort of our own turf, where our football players and our football teams and our soccer teams participate. We had graduation there. I want to send a specific shout out to the administration team at EC Glass for their pre-graduation information. We even had a tutorial video that helped us to understand where to be and how to get there and so forth, and that was just awesome. I want to send a shout out to my poet friends at Dunbar as they're celebrating their 8th grade career days. They have lots of fun activities, and I understand Dr. Edwards is going to be attending tomorrow. So it's a great opportunity to get to interact with the students, and I challenged them. I was part of the splash tower, so I challenged them, as you mock them through the splash tower, I said, if you can't hit the bullseye and drop the water on me, we're going to vote to have school all summer long. So that motivated a couple students to take a better shot. Also want to send a shout out to my friends at T.C. Miller, the Soaring Eagles, for their program that they presented. Moving to a different beat, it was quite a program with a wide variety of musicians, theatrical presentations, drum teams, and even Dr. Guerin presented student jokes that had been written by the students and shared throughout the year. So it was an excellent evening, very enjoyable, and I thought they did an awesome job. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Harvey. Dr. Gupta.
What I wanted to say, Dr. Edwards has said everything, so I share all your sentiments. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gupta. Dr. Sinha.
Just want to congratulate all the graduates this year. You've overcome quite a lot to achieve this milestone, so I wish you the best for the coming years. Also want to shout out to Heritage High School Performing Arts and their rendition of Cinderella, which was just wonderful. Thoroughly enjoyed it, so appreciative of that.
Thank you, Dr. Sinha. Dr. Nillis.
Yes, congratulations to all the students. Thank you to all the staff. Congratulations to the students' families. It's a success for them too. It was the Heritage graduation. It was cold sitting out there, but it was great to see the smiles on the kids, and they were all excited. And you know, that's what this is all about. So congratulations to everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Nillis. Dr. Brennan.
Yes, just briefly, I want to thank the LCS administration for doing such a great job with staff appreciation weeks, I guess over the 2 weeks, going to each of the schools and celebrating the staff. That was such a nice thing to do, and I'm sure the staff appreciated it. Also wanted to echo the comments of my other board members and Dr. Edwards about graduation. It was really amazing what a great job Heritage faculty and staff did at both the programs. They ran so smoothly. As a board member, I thought that there was all so well coordinated and so efficient, and as an attendee, I really appreciated the speeches by the students, who I thought were just so heartwarming and also brought, I think, tears to the eyes of some board members. And then as a family member of a 2021 graduate, it was so great to have that venue of being able to have family members there and so open. It was terrific. And last, I just want to thank whichever staff members were in charge of the weather to keep the rain off for both graduations. They get an extra star. But thank you all very much for that great event celebration.
Thank you, Dr. Brennan. Dr. Carter.
I was just so happy, and I just prayed that we didn't have any types of drama or children dying or being shot or in car accidents, and I don't think we did this year, so I was just so happy for that. And the graduation ceremonies were awesome, both Heritage and Glass, and the fact that we sat here one meeting and talked about this for about an hour and a half, and it went along well. It was very well. So sometimes the very things we talk about, we need to cut those out. But that was a very wonderful venue, and you didn't have to stress out about tickets, or it was plenty of space. So that was excellent. The other thing is the staff appreciation. They were so appreciative for us appreciating them, and that was wonderful. And just go back to the graduation again. If you have any doubt about what the employees are doing for the students, go to a graduation, you'll see, and how appreciative they are. And just a personal note, that's on the Empowerment Academy, they had 19 students to graduate, and it's amazing how the schools are doing, but then also to have the alternative schools to do what they do to make sure they stay engaged with students during this time. That was amazing. And another thing is a special announcement for a fifth grader. He won first place in the 2021 Young Writers Contest. His name was Luke Morrison. So just want to give him a shout out. And that name sounds familiar, Susan's grandson. That's all.
Thank you, Dr. Carter. Ms. Evans.
I'll say as well, I graduated from EC Glass, and I loved graduation being at City Stadium. I thought it just was fantastic. I loved everybody there. And I think what I recognized most during graduation, you know, we sit in here in every meeting, and we hear a lot of adults and their complaints. That's what we're, to listen to different points of view, but you sat in that graduation and watched teachers and students, and they were successful, they were happy, they were grateful for the year they had with their teachers. They formed bonds that they never would have formed, and they did it well. And you could, if you were at one of the graduations, you could just feel that. It was such a special year for this group of students, and they did it beautifully, and the teachers. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. I am so excited tonight. I don't think I've ever been as excited as I am about Lynchburg City Schools and what we are doing. And I just wanted to say in 1 minute less time how thankful I am to this board and this superintendent and this staff for helping me to get through one of the greatest challenges that I've ever had on the planet, and that is the homegoing of my father, James Edward Coleman Sr., a lifelong educator of over 40 years in the Richmond public school system, having majored in mathematics and chemistry. I can't even spell chemistry, but Dr. Nillis, maybe that'll pull onto me in the next lifetime. But I just want to thank you all. The flowers in Richmond, it was just beautiful. The cards, the texts, the phone call, the presents, I can't thank you enough. And so I just wanted to tell you thank you for all that you have done for me and my family. Also, I am so thankful for Paramount and the gym over there, and time will tell whether we'll have any further changes, but maybe the next gym will be at Heritage or wherever it's going to be to support those kids, and let us keep on doing what we're doing for our young people. All right, at this time, we will now have our informational items, and all of us can read, and so 1, 2, 3, and 4 are before you, and if there are no questions on that, the chair would entertain at this time a notice for our closed meeting pursuant to the Code of Virginia, Section 2.2-3711A1. The school board needs to convene a closed meeting for the purpose of discussing the following specific matters, and that is the superintendent's evaluation. Is there a motion for us to move into a closed meeting?
So move.
Been moved by Dr. Brennan, seconded by Dr. Carter. Any further questions or discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, just call the roll for us, please.
School Board Member Evans?
Yes.
School Board Member Carter?
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Brennan?
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Coleman?
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Nillis?
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Sinha?
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Gupta?
Yes.
School Board Member Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
All right, and our clerk will let us know where we're going to go to the room, and then when we're finished, we will close out in the appropriate way. We want to thank the public for coming, and let's continue to do great things in Lynchburg City Schools.
Are we coming?